Good morning, viewers. This is Global Entertainment News TV. I am your host, Musola, and welcome to our newspaper review segment. Let's start with the punch. Epileptic electricity. FG to inject 1,900 megawatts solar power into grid. FG to inject 1,900 megawatts solar power into grid. Moving on to the next. Government sets 8,000 megawatt power goal by 2027, taps private sector for grid expansion. Government sets 8,000 megawatt power goal by 2027, taps private sector for grid expansion. Up to next. Tinubu working remotely from overseas returns after Easter, says presidency. Tinubu working remotely from overseas returns after Easter, says presidency. Up to next. FG to clear 2 trillion naira Genco debt by December. FG to clear 2 trillion naira Genco debt by December. To next headline. Dangote fuel pricing despite crude oil crash, says S&P Global. Dangote fuel pricing despite crude oil crash, says S&P Global. Up to next. El-Rufai deserves fair treatment after supporting Tinubu, says Buhari ex-minister Shittu. El-Rufai deserves fair treatment after supporting Tinubu, says Buhari ex-minister Shittu. Moving on to the next. Natasha urged police to restore security as gunmen raids home. Natasha urged police to restore electricity as gunmen raid home. Moving on to the next. Emergency. Rivers administrators warns mischief makers. Emergency. Rivers administrator warns mischief makers. Up to next. Adeleke, Makinde meet over Oyo-Osun border tensions. Adeleke, Makinde meet over Oyo-Osun border tensions. To next headline. Murder trial. I found Ataga in pool of blood, says Chidinma. I found Ataga in pool of blood, says Chidinma. Up to next. Gani Adams. Others reject Southwest Sharia panels. Gani Adams. Others reject Southwest Sharia panels. That's it for the Punch. Move to the Vanguard. How bandit killers herdsmen have impacted farming food supply. How bandits killer herdsmen have impacted farming food supply. Moving on to the next. FG to clear 2 trillion naira of 4 trillion naira Genco's debt. FG to clear 2 trillion naira of 4 trillion naira Genco's debt. Moving on to the next. NBA slams Rivers administrator over alleged disregard for rule of law. NBA slams Rivers administrator over alleged disregard for the rule of law. Up to next. Gunmen attack Senate Apoti Uduaghan country home, demand property. Gunmen attack Senator Apoti Uduaghan's country home, demand damage properties. Moving on to next. Deep Sea. Ayiri Emami urges FG to investigate removal of Ugbo-Rodo, orders Tshisekiri community. Deep Sea. Ayiri Emami urges FG to investigate removal of Ugbo-Rodo, orders Tshisekiri community. To the next. WhatsApp to cut off millions of Nigerians using old phone. WhatsApp to cut off millions of Nigerians using old phone. To next headline. Tinubu will return to Abuja after Easter holiday, says presidency. Tinubu will return to Abuja after Easter holidays, says presidency. To next. Malami to all Makura group. You can't speak for CPC bloc. Malami to all Makura group. You can't speak for CPC bloc. That's it for the Vanguard. We move to the Nation. Electricity crisis. Government offers national grid to investors. Electricity crisis. Government offers national grid to investors. To next headline. Why Ponzi schemes strive by experts. Why Ponzi schemes strive by experts. To next. 1.9 million candidates for maiden CBY 1.9 million candidates for maiden CBY. To next. Eastern rail line likely ready before 2027, says NLC MD. Eastern rail line likely ready before 2027, says NLC MD. Moving on to next. Governors pay condolences visit to Plateau over killings. Governors pays condolences visit to Plateau over killing. Up to next. Tinubu fully engaged in governance despite being away, says presidency. Tinubu fully engaged in governance despite being away, says presidency. Up to next. First Lady backs women farmers with 68.9 million naira per state. First Lady backs women farmers with 68.9 million naira per state. To the next headline. 7 million meter shortfall being tackled, says minister. 7 million meter shortfall being tackled, says minister. To the next. Emami accused Delta government of boundary manipulation. Emami accused Delta government of boundary manipulation. Up to next. Natasha's family house attacked. Natasha's family house attacked. That's it for the Nation. We move to the Guardian. AI threat or opportunity. Schools, teachers cite concerns, search for academic integrity. Schools, teachers cite concerns, search for academic integrity. Up to next. Good Friday, seemingly ceaseless crucifixion of Nigeria. Seemingly ceaseless crucifixion of Nigeria. Up to next. Over 1.9 million students to sit for Nigeria's first digital WAEC. Over 1.9 million students to sit for Nigeria's first digital WAEC. To next. Reps cautions against fraudsters as SEC denies registering CBEX. Reps cautions against fraudsters as SEC denies registering CBEX. Up to next. Nwoye dumps APC, cites lack of rule of law justice. Nwoye dumps APC, cites lack of rule of law justice. Moving on to next. Presidency replies Atiku Obi, says Tinubu remains at work overseas. Presidency replies Atiku Obi, says Tinubu remains at work overseas. Up to next. Tension persists in Rivers as Tinubu's emergency rule clock 1 month. Tension persists in Rivers as Tinubu emergency rule clock 1 month. Moving on to next. Benue killing. Attacks are planned, not random occurrences, says David Mark. Benue killings. Attacks are planned, not random occurrences, says David Mark. Moving on to next. Reps allege security operatives know Plateau killers. Reps allege security operatives know Plateau killers. Up to next. Genewsng gets 2 trillion naira pledge from FG to avert blackout. Genewsng gets 2 trillion naira pledge from FG to avert blackout. To the next. Investors' confidence in oil, gas sector tied to reform execution, survey finds. Investors' confidence in oil, gas sector tied to reform execution, survey finds. And that's it for our newspaper review segment. Thank you for joining us today on this newspaper review. I've been your host, Busola. Until next time, have a great day.